So I talk a lot about practicing with a metronome, but a lot of the time people don't even know how to play with one. In this video, I will show you some basics of playing with a metronome so that you too can up your practicing game. Hi, my name is Liz from Cellomoji.com, and I give you tips and tools so that you can learn all of your songs on the cello. So to be totally honest, growing up, I actually really hated playing with a metronome. It was always really loud and in your face, this constant beep that would keep going on and on. But there is no question it has helped me to become a better cello player by developing a stronger sense of the beat and to be a little bit more precise with my rhythms in the music as well. Plus, later on as a professional, you end up playing a lot of recordings with a click track, and in a sense that is also like playing with a metronome. Especially now that it is so easy to always have a metronome with you, there really is no reason to not practice with one. I'll list a few options below of different apps that I know people use for metronomes, and I'll also list a few options where there are actual physical metronomes that are not apps that I use, as well as some others. For today and recording purposes, I'll be using this physical metronome here, and I'll link to this one below. The first thing that will be really important to establish is what does each beep of the metronome represent. Just to keep things simple in this video, I'm going to have each beep of the metronome represent one quarter note. But based off of different songs and pieces that you play, as well as different speeds that you play, the beep of the metronome could represent different values of notes. But here in this case, I'm just going to keep it to a quarter note. Just remember, through the extent of the song, you want the value to remain the same. So this means that if you're playing a piece and there are sections that are really, really fast, you don't want to suddenly switch what the metronome represents. You just want to take the entire thing nice and slow, and then later on when you're feeling more comfortable, you can speed it back up. Okay, so first off, I'm going to set the metronome to 60. So as you can see here, that means 60 equals the quarter note beat, or 60 beats per minute. 60 is going to represent how fast the beats are going to be coming out of the metronome and how you're going to play with it. In this particular metronome, you can actually set the beat here, and what you can do is you can actually set it to either 0 or 1. So when you change the beats here, you're basically changing how many times a different sounding beep will occur. So here at 0, it's going to be kind of like a lower sounding beep. But for me, when I'm practicing, I actually like to set it to 1. So this means that every beat is going to be a little bit of a louder sound on it. So say you were playing something in common time, which is 4/4 or 4 quarter notes in a measure. You can actually set the beat to 4 here, and when you press go, so that when you press go, then the first of every 4 beats is actually going to be at a different pitch. So this is just one way to keep track of the beats in the measure if you like. But for me, I just like to keep it all sounding the same so that I don't need to keep waiting while I'm practicing for that different sounding tick, and I can just keep playing with the metronome beat. That just saves a little bit of time, and it is a little bit of a personal preference. All right, so now we're going to get into playing with the metronome. So first off, I'm going to start with the value of a whole note. So keep in mind, if my metronome is set to the value of a quarter note, I should hear 4 beeps of the metronome before I change notes. So here we go. A half note means that there are going to be 2 quarter note beats within every half note. So when I'm holding half notes, I should hear 2 beeps of the metronome before I change notes. So here we go, half notes. Remember, we set our metronome beat to equal the value of a quarter note. So with every beep of the metronome, you're going to be changing your notes. So first I will start out playing open Ds, changing on every beat of the metronome, and then I will also play a simple D major scale with each note representing a quarter note. So here we go. Okay, so now on to eighth notes. Now, if you remember that each beep of the metronome equals a quarter note, then that means I have to play 2 notes for every beep of the metronome, because 2 eighth notes equals 1 quarter note. So it will sound a little bit like this when I'm playing just open strings. The D major scale using eighth notes, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to play 2 of every note. So there'll be 2 eighth notes of D, 2 eighth notes of E, so on and so forth. So here we go. Just listen to how different that is from the quarter notes again. I'll play the quarter note scale. And this is the eighth note scale. Play is a triplet. Now, there are definitely many different types of triplets out there, but for this recording we are going to do eighth note triplets. So remember, the metronome is representing a quarter note beat, and normally when we split a quarter note, it's going to be into 2 eighth notes. But to play a triplet, now we're going to try to squeeze in 3 eighth notes for every tick of the metronome. So it's going to sound a little bit like this with the open string. So now I'll play the D major scale using triplets. Just to remind you what the eighth notes will sound like, first I'll play it once with the eighth notes, and then I'll play it once with the triplets. So eighth notes in the open string will sound like this. Versus the triplets. So I'll play once through the scale with eighth notes. The scale with triplets. Okay, moving on, another common value to play with a metronome will be the 16th notes. So here, in this case, since the metronome beat equals a quarter note, that means I'm going to have to squeeze in 4 notes for every tick of the metronome. So keep in mind, if I was to split a quarter note in half, that would be 2 eighth notes. And then if I was to split each of those eighth notes in half, those would be 16th notes. So that's why there are 4 16th notes for every quarter note beat. Remember, when you are looking at the music, an eighth note will just have 1 bar connecting the 2 notes, but a 16th note will have 2 bars connecting the 2 notes. That is one visual way you can kind of remember which value of note you're looking at. So here is 16th notes using open strings. And now I'm going to be playing the D major scale with 16th notes. Again, so I'll play eighth notes so you can hear the difference between eighth notes and 16th notes. Here we go, eighth notes. And then here are 16th notes. So there are going to be 2 more rhythms that I want to cover in this video. The first is going to be a dotted half note. So a dotted half note means that there are actually going to be 3 quarter note beats within it. So a half note normally has 2 quarter note beats, and then that dot on the side there is adding an extra beat. So that means there are going to be 3 ticks of the metronome before I change notes. So it's going to sound a little bit like this. If I was playing this in 4/4 times, so that means there are 4 quarter notes in a measure, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hold 1 dotted half note, and then I'm going to rest on beat 4. So it's going to sound like this. So now I'm going to play the scale in dotted half notes, and then I'm going to play one of the notes in a quarter note beat. So it's going to be dotted half, quarter, dotted half, quarter. So it's going to sound like this. Okay, so this last rhythm that I'm going to cover is a dotted quarter note. Now this one can be a little bit tricky for some people to count at first because each tick of the metronome is only representing a quarter note. So technically you're going to actually hear 2 beeps before you are changing notes, but it'll be really, really important that you are subdividing the beat in your head. So a dotted quarter note means that there are going to be 3 eighth note beats within that note before you change. So you really want to think 1 and 2 and. So you're changing on the and of 2. So again, it'll be 1 and 2 and, 1 and 2 and. So if I was to do it with the metronome beat, I still want to be thinking in terms of eighth notes. So it's going to sound a little bit like this. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. So now I'm going to play the D major scale with a dotted quarter and an eighth note. So let's go over all the rhythms one more time. So first I'm going to start with the whole note. Next, we're going to the half note. Now we're going to move on to the quarter note, and here I'm going to play each note twice. Next, we're moving on to the triplet, and in this case, remember, it's going to be 3 notes crammed into one of those beats. Next, we're doing the 16th notes, so now there are going to be 4 notes for every beat. Now with the dotted half, remember, I'm going to hear 3 ticks of the metronome, and then I'm going to change. So here I'm going to do 1 dotted half note and then a quarter note on the same note, and then I'm going to change notes. To do a dotted quarter. So here I'm going to do a dotted quarter note beat and then an 8th note beat, and I'm going to do that on the same note before I change. So here we go, dotted quarter and an 8th note. Playing with a metronome at first can be a little bit frustrating, and perhaps it can even be a little bit annoying, but it is a great way to keep track of your own progress, especially if you're trying to take a piece from a slow state and then move it to become faster. A metronome will be a great way where you can track all of your numbers and all of your speeds and to stay really steady and consistent. If you want to learn more about the app that I like to use when I am on the go, or if you are just looking for some more cello tutorials, be sure to check out the videos that are on your screen right now. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!